Welcome to Talkin Tigers. I'm Rachel Whittaker. Les Miles is still unbeaten in 11 season openers with LSU, but this one almost slipped away from 13th ranked LSU. We know there's a lot to correct before number 18 Auburn comes in, so let's discuss it with LSU beat writer Jim Kleinpeter. Well, Jim, as fantastic as Leonard Fournette played in Starkville, 28 runs, 159 yards, and all 3 scores, the balance was non-existent with just 71 passing yards. Do you see that drastic discrepancy getting it done this year?
Oh, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think Brandon Harris is going to improve as the season goes on. In fact, I think you'll probably open him up a little bit this week against Auburn. But you have to look at the situation LSU was in. They didn't have last week's game to get Brandon to get his feet on the ground. They were going into a hostile environment, loud, packed with cowbell music, and it was really not a place where you wanted to test Brandon out too much. They threw some passes early in the game, and they closed it down once they got the lead. If LSU could have avoided some of the penalties on offense, and I think if you want to point out a problem, that's the problem, and those are first game issues. I think it's fair to say that you kind of get some of the mistakes out of the way in the first game, such as the holding penalties. And I think they would have found out that maybe Josh Booty isn't quite ready to start at right guard yet. They had they benched him in the second half.
Right, you mentioned Josh Booty getting benched during the game, and so we saw a lot of Maya Tahima. So we'll see if he continues to get a lot of playing time on the offensive line. And having Brandon's probably his best pass of the day to Traven Durrell negated by penalty definitely hurt. You and I were talking about the lost yardage during LSU's game. In terms of LSU's defense, Jim, Dak Prescott and the Bulldogs running game only had 43 net yards of rushing, so that's encouraging. But at the same time, on that last drive, Dak had a hot hand through the air, went 6 for 6 on the touchdown drive that could have tied the game. So your thoughts on LSU's defense?
Well, I think they did what they wanted to do. The offense couldn't stay on the field, and so the defense was out there for a lot longer in the second half than they wanted. By shutting down the run, and not just shutting down the running game, they didn't let Dak Prescott hurt them running. I think LSU's defensive plan was they didn't want to give Dak Prescott much room to run and beat them with his feet. They liked their chances of him. They would rather him throw the ball. And in the first half, he was inaccurate. He had some issues in the first half. Now, he finally got into a rhythm, and I think some of this had to do with the fact that Mississippi State didn't have a lot of film on LSU, but also as the game got longer and longer in the fourth quarter, I think LSU's defensive stars were a little bit gassed from because the offense couldn't hang on to the ball long enough.
Right, and speaking of some LSU defenders who did have great games, Arden Key and Kevin Tolliver, really good games on defense. 2 true freshmen Les Miles raved about during the summer. And Arden Key, 2 quarterback hurries and a sack, so a lot of upside for him. And now the Tigers will prepare for an Auburn team that almost had a monumental upset at the hands of Jacksonville State on Saturday. But we'll talk more about those Tigers as the week goes on. Jim, thank you.
My pleasure, Rachel.
And thanks again for watching, everyone. We'll see you on Tuesday.